and if I had to say it every day, I need people to get this. This is a systematic attack on black economics, on black civil rights. If you attack the black economic base, you attack all of black America. That's HBCUs, that's nonprofits, that's churches, that's employment, that's housing. It's all of that.
You're absolutely right. And I want people to also talk to your Congress people about this, because what we're dealing with right now is not just a systematic attack. It is an attempt to resegregate America. They call it DEI, you can call it diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a conversation about segregation. If you remember from American history class in high school, they talked about de facto versus de jure segregation. When you remove the legal protections that integrate institutions, when you violate that order from Supreme Court saying with all deliberate speed to use, as LBJ said, affirmative action in order to integrate institutions, we are talking about the resegregation of America, the resegregation of the American workforce, the resegregation of American educational institutions, and then the resegregation of the American dollar. Because as Janice Mathis says all the time, during slavery, discrimination and enslavement was not about proximity. They'd have a black slave warm up their bed, breastfeed their children, and make their grandchildren for them. They were not mad about being around black folks. It was about the power dynamic of that relationship. When you take away access to capital, when you take away access to housing, when you take away access to education, you're putting us back into a place that we haven't been in 150 years as black folks in America. And I, for one, refuse to be the generation where we have to look back at the ancestors and say, what the hell happened? We handed y'all everything, and y'all let it go away for a $1,500 check 7 years ago and a Sexy Red and Waka Flocka Flame concert? Is that what we're really doing as black folks in this country? So we have to put together a plan around this and how to fight back. It's not just enough to do speeches. Tomorrow morning, Congressman Cleo Fields and Congressman Jonathan Jackson are doing a live stream at 10 a.m. on both of their Instagram pages to talk exactly about the Congressional Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Caucus and these attacks that we're now seeing also on voting rights. I remind people that this is just step one. Listen to Charlie Kirk. Listen to Ben Shapiro. They've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years repealing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Not just gutting the Voting Rights Act and what's left of that husk, making sure that it can never be revived again. Stacking the federal courts to ensure that any protections for desegregation, affirmative action, or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are rooted out from the bottom and up. Even right now, the president and vice president are compelling our European allies through this tariff policy to get rid of diversity programs in their own countries, while also offering visas to South American whites who they feel are being discriminated against. It is exceedingly clear what the policy of this administration is. Deport 10 to 20 million brown people, destroy the economies of black and brown nations, annex Canada and their majority white population, make Greenland a territory and their majority white population, import white South Africans from South Africa with visas and incorporate them into the population. When Elon Musk talks about we need to save Western civilization, we need to make more babies, they're not talking about Consuela, they're not talking about Lakeisha, they're talking about Bonnie and everyone else from those European nations. This is a plan that David Duke talked about in 1988 that we're seeing being brought to fruition today, and we are sitting around watching it happen.
I am constantly telling people, Noah, that if you come to Washington, D.C., and if you stand in front of the White House, then you look to the left, you're going to realize there's no fence, there's no barrier. There's only one agency that shares along with the White House, Treasury. White House is power, Treasury is money. Treasury is money, White House is power. Those two go together. And I'm always saying, if you're not having a money conversation, you're not having an American conversation. Folks can talk about ending capitalism and rebuilding an American system. I'm just telling you right now, that shit ain't happening. This country is capitalism. It is predatory capitalism. It is about the money. And black folks need to understand that, and we've already seen this with the Confederate statues. We've seen this in Tennessee Well, they banned, Memphis passed a law when it comes to policing after those after those cops beat that brother, Tyree Nichols. What if they then do? Oh, no, 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 no. Y'all can't pass that law. Superseding them. They pass laws. No, no, no. Y'all can't pass that law. Just watch. Black people, listen to me. In states where you have significant black population, you might be in the red state Republicans control, they are going to start passing laws telling cities, counties, and school districts what they can and cannot do when it comes to DEI, MWBE, and contracts. That, for them, is the holy grail because that's where most African Americans are being able to do business. Nola?
Absolutely. Black codes, Jim Crow, all of it. I mean, it's part of the plan. And, you know, Robert said a lot of interesting things and some of the things that I wanted to pull some threads on. And, you know, I also want to make this point. You know, Black folks, we can make money in certain ways. You know, one of them is being an athlete. You know, we can entertain people. That's absolutely fine. Black entertainers have always been, you know, the exception. But, you know, you go too far when there is a Black president, then you're going even too far, when a Black woman, Southeast Asian woman wants to run for president. And then before you get to that point, you have the white president opening up the White House to all of our little Black behinds. You know, like we joke about how Black folks were in and out of the White House during the Biden-Harris administration, but it was kind of true. And they are watching all of this. So we have moved beyond the acceptable realms for Black folks to be prosperous and to entertain people. But when you were talking about real power, you know, when you were talking about decision making, that's when it becomes problematic. And too much of that was happening. Black people were gaining too much, not just in the sectors where it's acceptable, but beyond those areas. And it wasn't just one or two. You know, we were opening the doors and bringing in more and bringing in more and bringing in more. And being from Louisiana, you know, David Duke, since I was a child, has been on my radar, right? And he has, to Robert's point, has been committed to making sure that Black folks, you know, we don't get too uppity, but we got too uppity, so we had to be legally checked. So do not be surprised, to Roland's point, when you start seeing new laws, when you start feeling like, wait a minute, I can't gather with other Black people. You know, I can't be in this congregation, or I can't be in this community because there's going to be Black codes 3.0 that's going to roll out. And I am at the phase of this of what do we do? How do we counter it, right? Because we know all the things, we know all the problems, we've laid out all of the problems. But I agree with Robert. I'm not about to sit here and let this happen on my watch. Absolutely not. And so I'm happy that there's a lot of legal pushback, but it needs to be a dynamic approach. And I am eager to see what happens on April 5th. I'm eager to see how many people are going to actually get out there in the streets. I know that they're reporting very large numbers, but I'm eager to see what this is going to look like. Because if it's going to be the numbers that folks are expecting, it's going to be the largest showing of Americans standing up and saying, we don't think so. This is not what we want. Because where we are right now is very dangerous, not just for Black people, but also for women. Because as Black people, as Black codes start coming back, women are legally then told we have to stay in the house for one reason or the other, right? So this time right now is crucial, and I cannot stress that enough to the viewers. If you were staying home, and I understand you may not want to be out and marching and protesting, there are many other ways to get involved. There are many other ways for your voice to be heard. You got to get involved.
You said that, Nola, and Greg, I want you to speak up what we're talking about. Because I remarked this yesterday, there's this sister, I think she's a professor somewhere, saying that, you know, you shouldn't be telling Black folks that we need to be out there marching, protesting on April 5th. Then this other sister emailed me last night. I didn't like how you were talking to her. You were being rude. And I said, I'm confused. I said, folk get to talk to me crazy, but I can't fire back. I said, they get to say, they get to have an attitude and they get to have a certain tone in their voice. But when I clap back, then I'm in the wrong. And I sat there but you shouldn't be telling folk what they should do. We watch, we support. And I said, yeah, I get that. I said, but let me be real. And again, and there's one person, I made it clear. One was like, well, I used to support the show. I used to do this. And I was like, well, if you don't watch it anymore, I'm like, we good. I'm like, we'll be fine. But the thing that got me though was that you mad because I'm using a person like you were unhinged. I'm like, no, because I was using passion, advocating that this is not a moment for us to be sitting down. That brother in South Carolina knew they were going to pass that bill. But he still stood up and spoke. Cory Booker knew what they were going. When Senator Cory Booker finished after 25 hours, 5 minutes and 30 seconds, they moved to pass the NATO ambassador. Mm-hmm. Okay? But the point I'm making is this is not a moment for us to be kicking back, chilling like, man, okay, y'all got it. No. Because the reality this, Greg, people ain't getting this. Georgia Republicans could pass a bill that impacts the MWBE programs in Atlanta. You don't get you can't call Atlanta the Mecca. You don't have, Russell Construction is on its way to becoming a $1 billion construction company. How? Because it started because a black man, Maynard Jackson, when he was elected, black people were getting 0.0012% of all city contracts in Atlanta. Not 1%, not 0.5%, not 0.25, not 0.10, not 0.05, 0.0012%. So these folk, Greg, think I'm not going to fire back and tell black folks I need y'all to engage? Because if they come after the city contracts and the school district contracts and the county contracts and eradicate the state contracts, we'll see what's happening on the federal level. Trump sitting here and Elon getting rid of Musk. The Florida A&M Pharmacy School is now not getting now $17 million in grants. Oh, where's that little FAMU graduate who was down there cheesing at the White House for the Black History Month? Are you fighting for your school? Are you now, that little black MAGA girl, are you now going in telling Trump what you doing? And other little girl in Atlanta who was running her mouth for MAGA for Trump, is she standing up fighting for Morehouse, fighting for Spelman? Is she fighting for Fort Valley State? Are they fighting for those schools? Hell no. So excuse me if some of y'all got a little problem because I'm a little passionate about fighting for what's ours, because the last thing we need, as Robert said, and as Nola said, the last thing we need is for the shit to go down on our watch and we sitting around fucking around at brunch and doing a boots on the ground dance while they putting that boot in our ass.
That's the passion we have to have. Frankly, Roland, I would say that there is no we. There is a demographic we in terms of black people in the United States, just like there's a demographic of black people in the world. But in order for us to be a we, we'd have to think about, what do we want? What is our objective? When you look at Atlanta, and of course, here we are on the 57th anniversary of Dr. King's mountaintop speech in Memphis. What happened in Memphis? What happened in Atlanta and Charlotte? What happened in Detroit and Cleveland? What happened in Los Angeles? What happened in New York? There are class dimensions to this that we've never had to face. When we talk about economic benefits for Black people, that very same Maynard Jackson administration in Atlanta did very well for Black people who had access to and made it into the Black upper class and the Black solid middle class. But the Black poor remain. Those same Black poor that have a very deep critique of Andre Dickens and Keisha Lance Bottoms, whether you're talking about Cop City, Robert has talked about this. I'm saying all that as a prelude to this. If you read books like War for Eternity, which is Benjamin Teitelbaum's book on Steve Bannon, the globalist, a dangerous global political operative, I embrace Steve Bannon fully because he is a full-bred white supremacist. He doesn't care about the United States as much as he cares about his imaginary race. And like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and others, Steve Miller and others, they have a vision of trying to save themselves from what Francis Cress Welsing would call genetic extermination or annihilation, rather. They think they're preserving something in this ridiculous concept of race. But when we talk about what we want, and you talked to Representative Moore there, and he mentioned his father, James Moore, one of the Marines at Mumford Point, North Carolina, who, of course, went on to lead the NAACP there. And, what were those Black people fighting for in South Carolina? They were not fighting to sit next to white children in the schools. This is where we talk about Brown versus Board of Education, but we know that those early cases in South Carolina are what laid the foundation for everything that came late after. And what they wanted was equality, equal resources. And you mentioned Robert Smalls and Robert Elliott in that South Carolina legislature. And public education in the South, we know, was a Black idea, as Du Bois teaches us in his book, Black and Reconstruction. And they wanted everyone to get an education. But they didn't want to trade their culture, their foundation, as those Siala and Gullah Geechee Africans in Georgia and South Carolina. They just want to be left alone to build. This is where I'm going with it. Of course, this passion that we hear commingle with your keen analysis of what must be done is not to become beholden to a structure where a few of us get rich, the rest of us are poor, and we call that progress. So I would say this, finally. I find myself a lot more contemplative right now. I'm thinking about what must be done. One is education. We have never been patriotic. Anyone who wants to tell me that we have been patriotic, I really do invite you to let's be in conversation about that, because I'm going to walk you chapter and verse through our experiences. We've used patriotism as a defense mechanism. What these white boys are about to find out is that once you break it, it will not be rebuilt. Let's take South Carolina. You want to pass these anti-DEI laws? No problem. A supermajority, 82 to 32. I was in Columbia, South Carolina about 3 weeks ago. They got a statue of John C. Calhoun right outside their chamber where Representative Moore voted. Well, then pass that law. And the first running back, the first two guard for Dawn Staley at the University of South Carolina, who says, I will not attend for my 1 year in college.
Come on.
Make my money in name and likeness. I will not attend any school that doesn't have these policies. Watch how quickly these crackers say, wait. Now, I'm not saying that's about to happen today or tomorrow or next week. Deion Sanders could have done it at Jackson State, but he's not built like that. And that's not a criticism of him, because there are very few who are built like that. But I'm saying when one emerges, when Dawn Staley decides, maybe I'll coach at University of South Carolina. No, South Carolina State. Maybe nobody needs to play football for Clemson anymore. Now, some of these young people won't have the maturity to make that decision, and they're going to play anyway. But when enough of us begin to do otherwise, and when the white boys who claim that they are genetically superior, intellectually superior, realize that they don't have enough people, not only in the United States, but in the world, to reverse what they are putting in motion now, oh, woe be unto it. I'm not a flag waver. I don't give a damn about the American flag, but I tell you what I give a damn about. I give a damn about my people, wherever they are in the world, and I give a damn about our common humanity. When they break it, we will have an opportunity to build the thing that has been in our heart from the beginning. And it ain't got nothing to do with George Washington. It ain't got nothing to do with a Constitution or a Declaration of Independence. And it has everything to do with Black self-determination and human freedom. And I am excited about what's going on right now, because these hillbillies are showing the world who they are, and they have overestimated their ability to control a whole world. We need to be smart now and look at our allies around the world and act locally. With that in mind, we're going to be better than fine. We're going to be just fine. Just fine.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.